Billy Blue, my knight in shining brindle. Welcome to another episode of A Poet Reads to Write. Today I thought I might take a return look at Shirley Jackson's magnificent novel, The Haunting of Hill House, and in particular this time, because I've done a whole video on this novel now, haven't I? So in particular this time I might use my reflection on The Haunting of Hill House to look at that remarkable teleseries that has recently been made as an appropriation, an adaptation of the novel into that form of the miniseries for television. But as I'm looking at Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, this week I'm going to read it alongside that remarkable book by Henry James, The Turn of the Screw. The Turn of the Screw, boy, is there a better title for a novel in the English language? I just think it's a remarkable title. You know, the accumulative effect of those monosyllabic words, the juxtaposition, you know, the way he juxtaposes sharing with the hardness and the pain of the screw, and the word screw. It's such an almost violent word, isn't it? And then, of course, you know, the turn of the screw goes back, alludes back to those medieval torture devices used during the time of the Reformation and Counter-Reformation, and during the time of the Inquisition, even before that. I just think the turn of the screw, you know, it wouldn't be the same, would it, if it was the turning of the screw? There wouldn't be anywhere near quite as many resonances as there is with those monosyllabic words. The turn of the screw. Whose turn is it? And then the turning of that screw. It's just so much going on in that title. And the book itself, it's, you know, for it to be considered such a masterpiece of the Gothic tradition, you know, and coming out of that almost Victorian period of the great long serialized novel. You know, it's almost a novella. It's 150 pages in length. It's a remarkable book. I don't know why it has taken me so long to get around to reading it. As I said in my video on Shirley Jackson, I am very new to horror, so I guess that's why it's taken me so long. I just haven't been drawn to watching or reading horror or Gothic at all. And this is really a new thing for me since I've really got active on BookTube. And it's, you know, fellow booktubers that have really inspired me, motivated me to get into horror and Gothic and see what it's all about. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the Shirley Jackson, and it took me a little bit of time to really get into the Henry James, to really tune my ear to what was going on. You know, this is really a novel that's about ambience, it's about atmosphere, despite the fact that it's only really a novella, and, you know, it is very compressed, but it really is a novel of atmosphere, of mood. And the other interesting thing about it is James's writing style. It's very matter-of-fact, very formal, and the sentences are often very long, almost convoluted, very sophisticated, very complex. And it is telling the story of these two children. And I suppose that is one of the things that James does that no one else had had the courage maybe to try before, to really explore evil, the supernatural, wickedness, if you want to call it that, to explore that through the prism of these two children who seem to be so pure and angelic. But you always get the sense in the first half of the novel, don't you, that the kids are almost too good to be true, too angelic, and you're always waiting for the turn. And boy, it does come, I guess, doesn't it? Henry James, this remarkable novel. You know, to begin with, you know, it's a very small novel, you know, and it's really only about the two children, Miles and Flora. There are the two ghosts, Miss Jessel and Quint, who probably were two people who had once worked on this big estate where these two kids were sent to be looked after by their adopted parent, I guess, really, after their parents had passed away. So, you know, the novel is about bereavement. It is about loss, living with the legacy of all this sort of stuff, about trauma. And then, of course, there's the governess. There's always a governess in these sorts of novels, isn't there? The governess and the housekeeper. And the whole novel takes place, you know, in a very small, confined world, almost claustrophobic. And it's just focused on those 5 characters. At the beginning of the novel, you know, when we have the introduction to the governess and the governess is with the children, at the beginning, you know, we're told all the time from the governess's point of view, because it is a first-person narrator, you know, very much seen through the eyes of the governess. So it's the governess's story about what happened. And she says, you know, at the beginning, I was under a charm on a great wave of infatuation and pity, because she knew these two angelic, gorgeous little kids had both lost their parents. And, you know, lessons with them all through that charming summer. It was a trap to put me off my guard. So even at the beginning of the novel, there were some alarm bells ringing in the mind of this governess that maybe everything is almost too good to be true. You know, was it like a trap to put me off my guard? Both the children, you know, they had the bloom of health and happiness. They were of such gentleness, so extraordinary. The gold was still in the sky. You know, to have a relationship with two children so that it even makes you see gold in the sky. Wow. Henry James's writing is just so moody and atmospheric. Great novel of ambient character. The attraction of my small charges was a constant joy. It was all the romance of the nursery and the poetry of the schoolroom. They were like small cherubs. Oh, the writing style. You can just see in the first half of this novel, Henry James is just having a blast. He's just enjoying himself, just describing this world that is too good to be true. These two angelic children that are also way too good to be true. Henry James, I think, is just having a ball, just going to town, creating this atmosphere. And then, of course, things start to maybe change a little bit. And then when they do start to change, to begin with the governess, she says, I was there to protect and defend the little creatures. They had nothing but me. I was a screen, and I was to stand before them. So the governess really, you know, really through empathy, really wants to be that shield to protect these little cherubs from all danger outside. The problem, of course, is if the danger is already inside. And this is one moment in the novel where the governess really does start to work out that maybe not is all quite well. Flora, the little girl, she saw an unmistakable horror one night, an evil, pale and dreadful. She saw it and she said nothing. That was the horror. You know, the governess knew that the little girl had seen this ghostly presence because the governess had also seen it. And she couldn't believe that the little girl just seemed to take it in a stride and didn't have to ask any questions, wasn't upset. It was just perfectly normal. Almost as though the ghostly presence had been beckoned, had been called by little Flora. That's, of course, the other remarkable thing in the novel, isn't it? Now, Henry James is clever enough to leave it all up to us as to whether these ghosts, the evil presence, you know, whether it's even happening or whether it is all in the mind of this wonderful governess who means so well. But, you know, is the wickedness, is the brokenness all actually in her own fractured, traumatized consciousness? So did Flora see any ghosts? You know, was it again all just in the mind's eye of the governess? It's really interesting. Henry James manages this tension, I think, really cleverly in this novel. And then she says through the governess, to gaze into the depths of blue of a child's eyes and pronounce their loveliness a trick of premature cunning was to be guilty of cynicism. And our governess is not guilty of cynicism. She's always seeing the best. There was a period extravagantly and preternaturally when they were fond of me. They were all hugs and sweet kisses. Oh boy. Their loving homage of me. We lived in a cloud of music and affection and private theatricals. Oh. These two little kids, they never quarrelled or complained. They had plenty of anguish, but, thank God, no terror, because the governess kept shielding them, protecting them. The girl explained with the loveliest, eagerest simplicity. Oh, it's beautiful. And then there's this little moment between the governess and Miles, the little boy. The governess says to Miles, "You must tell me the truth." And Miles looks up to the governess and says, "Oh, gentleness itself, like a little fairy prince, you must think me bad for a change. Yes, bad. You must think me bad." Oh boy, the hinge. Things are starting to go wrong. He was all sweetness and gaiety and leant forward and kissed me. At midnight, it's when I'm bad, when I am really bad. But again, James just handles this tension so cleverly as to whether the kids are actually getting up to any mischief, whether there are any ghosts, whether they see anything, or whether it is all in the tortured brain of the governess. Is this novel a realist novel about psychological tension, or is it a supernatural thriller about the supernatural world really colliding and coming in to our world, crashing in? It's really interesting, and James manages this so cleverly, I think. And at the end of the novel, when things have really gone awry, James says at one stage through the minds of this little governess, "You loved me completely, and the rest is all confetti." Again, that juxtaposition, that beautiful image of the wedding ceremony again. It's so clever, isn't it? And then James also says, ghosts are regrets, sorrow, pain, and wishes. Which also leads me, I suppose, to think more and more that this is it's a realist novel of psychological, thrilling properties. I'm not sure that I have any sense of there being anything that is supernatural. I certainly believe in God, but I guess my conceptualization of God is, I guess, through nature is God and God is nature. And I think there's enough magic in nature, in the universe, maybe even the multiverse, if the physicists are now right. I think there's enough magic there for all of us, and I think that is enough spirituality for me. I have lived with bereavement for a long time, and I've had two brothers literally die in my lap, and I think I have a lot of problems believing in the spirits, in miracles, in the supernatural. I think I've got a bit of a block there because of my own lived experience. So I guess I'm on the side with the Taming of the Screw. Sorry, the Turn of the Screw, not the Shakespeare play. The Turn of the Screw. I think I am on the side that reads this novel very much as a realist novel of psychological, thrilling properties. These are people being forced to live very closely together, damaged people, and they're loving, they're trying to do their best, but things go awry, things go wrong, and then they have to try and live with the consequences of that. And it is a novel about loss and bereavement, about sadness, the trauma of loss. It's a very, very powerful, powerful book. Stephen King has said, when he was asked about, his favourite works of horror, and what were they, he always returned to Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House and Henry James's, The Turn of the Screw. And Stephen King wrote that they were the only two great supernatural works of horror. The Haunting of Hill House and The Turn of the Screw. And for Stephen King, the effect of these novels was to make him feel that there are secrets best left untold and there are things left best unsaid. Oh, that's brilliant, isn't it? Stephen King had an incredible turn of phrase. I haven't read any Stephen King novels yet. They're on my card to be read very soon. I can't wait to start reading some Stephen King. I'm getting quite excited about it. He writes about these sorts of things with so much finesse, and he has a great turn of phrase. He really has read deeply and understood the horror genre, and I love listening to Stephen King talk about things like The Haunting of Hill House and The Turn of the Screw. The Turn of the Screw, why did James even write it? To some extent, he dabbled in spiritualism. Spiritualism was the thing, wasn't it? In that Victorian going through to the Edwardian period at the turn of the century. There were, spiritualism was anthropy, theosophy, and these sorts of things. Now, they were very popular. And then, of course, World War I really put everything on steroids, and more people turned to spiritualism, to medium with the dead, so that they could somehow get connection again to, of course, husbands and sons and uncles, and that whole generation wiped out in the Great War. And to some extent, novels like this, I think, need to be read in that sort of milieu. But why did James write this novel? Was he dabbling in this novel as a spiritualist himself? Did he really believe in the supernatural, in this ghosts, in the communion with the dead? Or was it also, as he also said, he was short of a buck and he wanted to write a thriller that he knew would get a big readership and would earn him a lot of cash? It's so interesting, isn't it? It really is very, very interesting. And then to return to The Haunting of Hill House. Oh boy. Shirley Jackson has just knocked my socks off. I can't believe how much I am enjoying Shirley Jackson. This novel, I can't see where I put it. Here it is here. This novel, The Haunting of Hill House, the edition I have from the Folio Society, comes in this beautiful slipcase. And you get this beautiful little illustrated hardback book. It's such a powerful, powerful story. And the book I'm going to read next is this beautiful thing. Look at this, also from the Folio Society. This beautiful, sturdy slipcase. And We Have Always Lived in the Castle will be my next read. And this will be the subject of my next video. I can't wait to read more Shirley Jackson. I am really, really enjoying Shirley Jackson. And my daughter and my son-in-law, they advised me recently that they'd been on Netflix, this mini-series, this teleseries, appropriating the novel of The Haunting of Hill House as a mini-series. And it's The Haunting of Hill House is a 200-page novel. It's not much more than a novella. And these people, Mike Flanagan, who created and directed the series, Mike Flanagan, he turned The Haunting of Hill House into 10 one-hour episodes. And at first, I must admit, I was very suspicious. I really wasn't that keen to give it a go. But I enjoyed the novel so much that in the end I relented and I took the advice of my son-in-law and daughter, and I have watched The Haunting of Hill House. And oh my boy, I think it's the most remarkable thing I've watched on television this year. It is remarkable. The way he's turned this short 200-page novel into a 10-hour, massive, almost major movie. 10 one-hour episodes. I think he's done a remarkable job. And I love the way he's been so clever with it too. What he does is he has in 1992, Hugh and Olivia Crane, the parents, they buy this old mansion because they want to, they think they can make a quick buck out of it. Basically, they want to renovate it, do it up, and sell it, and then use the money that they make to buy their forever house with their 5 children. So Hugh and Olivia Crane, and they're the most loving, adorable couple. They just love one another to bits. And the father, Hugh, he just has my heart. I see myself in him so much, except I'm not a clever Mr. Fix-It and a problem solver like Hugh is. But I see myself in him so much. He's very loving, very awkward, very shy, very focused on his wife and his 5 children. He's just a loving, good-natured dad trying to make ends meet, trying to do what is best. And, geez, nearly everything turns out pretty bad. And I guess, you know, as the dad, he takes some responsibility for that. But you do know also that there's only so much responsibility that he should be given. And in the end, he was a great man doing his best, and things just went awry for him. And so they move into this house to sell it. And of course, straight away, the kids are having nightmares. You know, there's something obviously not right. And then they discover this black mold. So what they thought was going to be just a 2-month project to buy, renovate, and then sell to make a big profit, they knew that they were stuck, and they had all their family capital in the house. So they couldn't just walk away, you know. They would be left destitute. So they were really in a bind. They were stuck. And the 5 children, oh boy, what Mike Flanagan has done, I think it's so clever. The eldest kid, Steve, is clearly Dr. Montague from the novel The Haunting of Hill House. You know, he is Dr. Montague as a little boy. He's serious, he's always understanding, explaining, and he grows up to become a writer who writes the history of ghosts and haunted houses, and even though he doesn't believe in anything supernatural, he's very much like Dr. Montague from The Haunting of Hill House. And then the second child is Shirley, who is clearly, I think, who grows up to be a mortuary. She owns a mortuary business, and she manages this business, and she does a very good job, makes a lot of money. But I think she's clearly Shirley Jackson. You know, the use of that Shirley, it's just too clear. And then there's Theodora, or Theo, of course, and then there are the twins at the end, Luke and Eleanor, called Nell. And they're obviously the kids, you know, again, the couple that are... Because when you go to The Haunting of Hill House, you know, when Dr. Montague assembles those 4 people to help him with his experiments to see whether there is any haunting or ghosts, they really, you know, they only live with one another in that house for a week or 2. But it seems like forever. And it seems like they've been living with one another. They really do come across to me as a family. So I think it really fits the purposes of this mini-series to bring them all together as a family who accidentally met in Hill House and lived in it for a period of time as children. And then, of course, they have a reunion years later back in Hill House when things have really started to go wrong. You know, the children grow up to be adults, and, you know, one is a drug taker who lives on and off on the streets. Another one does pass away by suicide. There's lots of problems with alcohol. You know, they're all loving, good people. They're trying to do their best. You know, they're nice people. From the outside, you would look at these people and you would think, boy, they've got it all. You know, this is a family that's going to thrive. And of course, they do anything but thrive. And it all comes back to Hill House, this cancer almost that has got into their family and started to eat away at its very core. And the book, it's, you know, the mini-series, like the book, it is also, like Henry James, it is very clever. It never settles the question as to whether this is a realist psychological thriller or whether it is in fact a supernatural thriller, and whether the supernatural has crashed into this earth and done irreparable damage to it. So Flanagan in the TV series is very successful at holding this tension, just like Henry James and Shirley Jackson themselves. They never settle this. It's one of the things I think that I most love about horror as a genre. The horror that I've read, because I'm so new to it. The horror that I have read, it never answers this question for you. It always leaves this tension there about whether we are reading a realist psychological thriller or whether it is supernatural thriller. And I really think to write a novel or to create a huge mini-series and to have this tension in every episode, in every chapter, and never resolve it, to just have the tension hanging and to dazzle, you know, as you walk along with it on the tightrope of the fiction. Oh, I just think it's a remarkable achievement. Jackson, James, and then Flanagan with the TV series, they do this so well. You know, whether this horror is just taking place inside the heads of these broken, tortured people. So is it being projected out onto the world, or are these things actually happening? You know, was Hill House actually haunted? A cancer that ate away at these kids, or were they sensitive kids anyway? Because, you know, Olivia Crane, when she goes to the house, she says she has always been sensitive. And we always know that that means that she's been sensitive, as in being aware of ghostly presences and the supernatural crashing in on our world. So did she bring all this with her to the occupation of the family into Hill House? And of course, many of the kids are just like Mum. They are sensitive. You know, they seem to have this sensitivity to ghosts, to presences. And, you know, in the novels and in the miniseries, it is said all the time that there are certain people, probably like me, there are certain people who are simply not sensitive. You know, it doesn't matter if the ghost is standing right in front of them. They are simply not going to see what is there to be seen, because they have no sense of the supernatural, of the spiritual. And other people, these things are very real. They're right there in front of them. And often, you know, living with these ghostly presences is not obviously a good thing. Because, you know, Olivia Crane and the children and the family who are sensitive to these presences, they have a terrible time. So, yes, the television series, which you can see on Netflix, The Haunting of Hill House, I would really recommend it. I think it's a remarkable miniseries. I just love the way concertinas in and out of the Hill House, and, you know, going backwards in time and forwards in time, and having the children there growing up in this house and the damage the house does to them. And then when they return to the house 20 years later as adults with their estranged father, and you know your heart is breaking for them. You know that they're all good, loving people. They all want what is best. But something has just gone awry. And, you know, Mum, Olivia Crane, she passed away by suicide. One of the daughters passes away by suicide. It's just devastating. There's drugs, there's alcohol, and they're good people trying to do their best, trying to love each other and do the best for one another. You know, they're helpful, they're caring, they're sensitive. I just think it is a remarkable miniseries. I love what Mike Flanagan has done with The Haunting of Hill House. And I am utterly convinced, you know, how you turn a 200-page novel into a 10-hour miniseries, I don't know. I think it's a remarkable achievement, but he's pulled it off so well. It really is the most remarkable thing I've seen on television this year. You know, I don't watch a lot of television, but boy, I'm really glad I gave 10 hours to watching The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix. It was just astounding. Wow. And it brings me back to the mighty Stephen King again. The Haunting of Hill House and The Turn of the Screw. They are the two great supernatural works of horror. And their biggest impact is, according to Stephen King, we know after reading these novels that there are secrets best left untold, and there are things left best unsaid. Oh boy, Stephen King. I can't wait to read some Stephen King when I get to it. So my next book that I will be reading is this one by Shirley Jackson. We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I'm very excited about reading this. You can see it's a beautiful hardback edition I've got from the Folio Society. It's all illustrated with beautiful pictures like this. It's the same person who did The Haunting of Hill House. They're marvellous pictures, again really juxtaposing, you know, the fact that you've got these people living very closely together, loving good people, but people who do damage to one another and live with great trauma. So I'm really looking forward to reading this novel. It's again, as you can see, it's a very short little thing. I'm loving Shirley Jackson, so this is my next book to read, and this will be my next video. We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I'm just having such a great time reading all of this Gothic or horror literature. I'm really enjoying it. It's really making me think about my own relationships to spirituality and, you know, what I have lost and what I have left behind and maybe what I should rediscover in my future. Because I do have a real longing to return to my Christian faith, to return to my Christian roots. You know, it would mean the world to my family, and it would mean a lot to me if I could somehow resolve some of my mental health issues and my issues with bereavement and find a way back. I certainly really want to. Whether it's possible, I'm not sure. I have these terrible push-pull factors which you can explore if you want in my videos on conversion or my conversion experience. So my next video is We Have Always Lived in the Castle. Thank you and bye for now.